Welcome back to another edition of the Real Spiritual Talk podcast. I'm your host, Lamont Gates, and today my guest says he collapsed due to breathing problems, exited his body, and had all his questions answered directly by God. Joining us today, ladies and gentlemen, is near-death experiencer Aaron Thomas Green. Aaron, welcome to the Real Spiritual Talk podcast.
Thanks, Lamont. Great to be here.
Absolutely, no problem at all. Now, Aaron, I understand that your near-death experience happened when you were about 6 years old or turning 6 years old. Is that correct?
Yeah, shortly before my sixth birthday, I
Okay.
had this experience.
Okay, and I usually go into a guest's religious or spiritual experiences prior to having a near-death experience, but perhaps at age 6, did you have any or not have any religious beliefs?
Uh, really, I mean, my parents took me to a Catholic church growing up, and I'd been exposed to concepts of God, and I'd heard about Jesus, but I didn't have any well-formed ideas or thoughts about it, except I definitely heard about the concept of God.
Yes, I would imagine that at such a young age. So, with that said, why don't we get into what it was that actually triggered your near-death experience to occur? I understand it was some sort of breathing complications.
Yeah, so I'd been in a neighbor's backyard playing with friends, just doing the stuff that kids did. Uh, I don't know exactly what we were doing, but somehow I had a significant breathing problem, and no matter what I did, I just could not get a breath of fresh air. I couldn't get air into my lungs, and I was becoming more and more upset about this breathing problem, and I didn't know what to do because I just could not breathe. And so I started trying to walk home, and I got away from my friends, and this breathing problem, it triggered for me this experience. Basically, my consciousness left my body, and I saw as my body fell to the ground, and I was just kind of floating there in my neighbor's backyard. And if you want me to go ahead and go into it, I will.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. So you definitely saw your physical body collapse while you were outside of it.
Absolutely, I watched it fall to the ground, and immediately it's like I realized, okay, I'm not just this person. I'm something different, and it was very familiar to be like that. Like it felt comfortable, like way more comfortable than being in a human body. And a couple things really stood out. One was that like the flow of time was different. Like I could feel it, and it was very uh, like it. I don't know. I can't explain it, but you could really just feel that the flow of time wasn't the same. Somehow it worked differently, and I could see my friends in the background, and they didn't have any idea what was going on with me. They were just doing their thing, and a couple things happened really quickly. The first was I had my entire life flashed in front of me very quickly. It felt like a fraction of a second, but it was my entire life in extreme detail. Like every little thing like flashed back for me, like I relived it. And the interesting part was that, not only did I re-experience my entire life, but I could literally feel how I had made my parents feel. Like I could feel the impact that I had on them. Um, a couple things really stood out from that. One was my mother's love. Like that really, it took on a significance in this realm. Like it felt important. And then my father, he loved me too. But what really stood out for him was his frustrations with having a baby, with changing dirty diapers, and when I would cry, and that kind of thing. Like his frustration really came across to me. Um, and then also, I noticed in the distance, like a it looked kind of like a star. There was a light in the distance that somehow I was like instinctively drawn to it. Like I knew it was important. I knew there was something significant about it, but I didn't understand it. I didn't know why it was important, and so I didn't continue to focus my attention on it. But I just kind of floated there in my neighbor's backyard, and I started to have these questions. And as I would have questions, it's like the answers would come to me in like in extreme detail. And the first question I had was, what am I? Obviously, I'm not this person, this body laying on the ground. I'm something fundamentally different. And I was able to like look at myself, and in that state, I just kind of existed as a round orb of light, mm, uh, just a consciousness that, no body to speak of. And that wasn't a bad thing at all. Like it was good. It was very comfortable to be like that. And I like knew that I had been like this before. Like this was very familiar to me somehow. Um, and I had more questions. And as I would have questions, it's like the answers were shown to me. Like I re-experienced something that I'd been through previously that I'd completely forgotten while I was living this human life. And one of my first questions was like, well, where did I come from? Why am I on this planet living as this person? What's going on here? And so this memory replayed for me, and it started out as I had been like a round orb of consciousness, just like I was in my neighbor's backyard, and I was with hundreds or thousands of other orbs that were just like me. We all basically looked the same, and we existed in what I would call a sea of light. It was like very bright, and we were all together, like on top of each other almost. And we were kind of like friends or acquaintances. I don't know, but we were all happy, but we were ignorant. We didn't know anything. We had no experience. We didn't have any real knowledge. We just kind of existed like that. And periodically, we'd get some kind of. There was like a treat that we would all get. There would be one for all of us. And as a little kid, it reminded me of like getting a cookie. It wasn't something we ate, but somehow it like gave us a little temporary increase in happiness. Kind of like if you eat a cookie, that kind of thing. Anyway, one time there was like one fewer of these gifts than there were souls in this group, and we all understood that. And I made the conscious decision that okay, all these other orbs of consciousness are just like me, and they want this treat just as much as I do. So I'm just going to let them have it, and I'm going to go without, and it's going to be okay because I want those around me to be able to have that benefit. And when the last treat came to the last soul, I was very, very gently picked up out of this sea of consciousness. I was contacted by a higher level intelligence, like a very powerful being contacted me, like mind to mind communication, and basically said, um, what you did by giving up this thing that you wanted for those around you is very important. It indicates that you're ready to move on from this place that you're in, essentially. And just for simplicity, I'll call this higher level entity God. And God said that He was my creator, that He had made me, and that I was very much loved, and I was very important, and that there was a wonderful uh, existence in store for me. That I was really going to enjoy my existence. It was a wonderful thing to be created, and it was just going to be fantastic. And essentially, He explained to me that um, I was, created with free will, but I was created with no knowledge or experience. Basically, I was going to need to gain knowledge and experience before I could really appreciate all the wonderful, fantastic parts of our existence. Um, and uh, but I needed to go through something difficult first, and going through this difficult experience would help me to learn and to understand the things that I needed to know in order to appreciate my existence and to really enjoy everything that was in store for me. And I said something like, well, can't you just forcibly change me? Can't you just make me however I need to be so that I can enjoy my existence? Like, why should I need to go through some kind of difficult experience? And God explained that, yes, God was absolutely capable of forcibly changing me, but we were created as free will beings, and having free will is extremely important. And it was like a core principle of our creation in the first place. God didn't want us to be like just mindless slaves to Him. God wanted us to be able to make our own decisions. And so us having free will was like a cornerstone of our creation in the first place. And so God wasn't going to override our free will. God was going to allow us to express our free will. And He further explained that, God is, that He's, kind, loving, compassionate, honest, forgiving, like all these loving characteristics is who God is. And for us to really enjoy our existence, we need to freely adopt those same principles for ourselves. That's like how this works. And we were going to go through this experience that would educate us and allow us to choose for ourselves all these positive traits. And that's essentially how it works, and the experience I was going to go through. And so I basically said, okay, I guess that sounds reasonable. And then God said something like, do you want to see my face? Do you want to see what I look like? And I said, okay, sure. And so my attention was turned. I had been looking at all these souls I had been with, and I was turned to where I can see a huge sun-like entity. It looked like a giant sun to me, but it's like there was billions and billions of souls all together, like orbs of light that were all together that made up this sun. It was like simultaneously a single entity, and it was like billions and billions of individuals that made up this huge entity. They were like all existed together, but it looked like a huge sun. And some of these souls that were part of this, they like came to the surface so I could see them more clearly, and they were very happy to see me. They welcomed me into existence. They basically said that they had been through what I'm about to go through. Like they were on the other side of that, and now they existed in extreme happiness. And they were really happy that I was there and that I was going to join them eventually because I was going to bring something to the group that nobody else could replicate. There was something that I had and something that all these other souls had that was irreplaceable. Like there's no two souls that are identical and just alike. And that when I joined them, it was going to increase their happiness just a little bit. And they were really excited about that. So I said, okay, that sounds good, I guess. And God basically asked me, okay, are you sure you're willing to go through this? It's going to be difficult, but you need to freely accept this. And I said, yes, based on what He had told me, that I had a wonderful existence in store for me. I did through this very short, very difficult education, and I agreed to it. And so it's like, bam, with my agreement, it's like I was shot out very quickly, and I was leaving this place or realm or whatever it was. I was going away from it very quickly, and I still had like a mind-to-mind telepathic communication with God, and we started looking at all these different physical places I could go. I think they were like different planets, like a whole bunch of different planets I could go to, and we looked at a whole lot of them, and eventually we got to Earth, and there was something about Earth that really appealed to me. It was like I was positive this is where I wanted to go. And God basically said, are you sure? And when I gave my final agreement that, yes, I'm sure this is where I want to go, then the memory ended. My question had been answered. Where did I come from? And what am I doing on this planet? Like that question was answered. And so then I was like back to floating in my neighbor's backyard, just kind of aimlessly wandering around, trying to figure out what was going on. And I had more questions. I wanted to know, okay, well, why am I Aaron Green? Like, why am I this person? I understood how I got here and where I came from, but why am I living this life? And so again, I re-experienced this memory I had previously. And this memory started. I was a soul, and I had like just gone through something very difficult. Now, it's important to understand the first memory that I described, like I was an immature new soul with no experience. Now it was clear that I had many experiences. Like I wasn't a new soul at this during this memory of how I became Aaron. Like I had been through a lot. It was clear I had many lives, and as far as I can tell, I'd really screwed up a previous life. Like I had made a lot of mistakes, and I was like frustrated with myself. I was kind of, I don't know, agitated maybe, and I was kind of like uh, difficult to work with for my guides, I think. But they wanted me to come back to Earth, and essentially I said, "I'm not going back to Earth. You can't make me. I don't want to go back there." And they said, "Okay, you're right. We can't make you, but would it be okay if we showed you some souls that you could help if you went back to Earth?" And I said, "Well, okay, I guess that's okay." And so they showed me. They showed me some different souls that I would be able to help if I went back to Earth, and that kind of softened my resolve because I really liked the idea that maybe I could help somebody. And I said, okay, well, maybe we can look at the possibilities here, of what kind of life I could have. And so they showed me a person they wanted me to become. And this person was going to be extremely angry, kind of like, I think the person had like a very difficult childhood. Maybe they'd been abused or something. And their entire life was dominated by anger. And as a soul, I would have an angry life, and I would spend my entire life working against that anger to try to not give in to anger. But I completely rejected that life. I told my guides, no, I'm not going to do that. And I remember wondering, like, I don't know why anybody would choose that life, but I knew that some soul would eventually choose that. And so they said, okay. And so we started looking at some other opportunities available to me. Um, it was pretty clear that I had previously contributed to society. Like I had helped, early society, one way or another. I'd helped get humanity to where it is now. Like I had helped with a lot of the early steps, a lot of the hard work, and because I'd done this previous work in previous lives, that afforded me the opportunity that like I had more choices as a soul about where I could go, what sort of parents I could have because of the work I had done in the past, and so I was able to choose a relatively easy upbringing. I had running water growing up. I had plenty of food. I had, air conditioning in the summer and heat in the winter. Not everybody has that. And the reason I was able to choose a life with these luxuries is because of the work I had done in the past. Anyway, we started looking at some parents and uh, I saw that the genetics available to these parents, what kind of body I could have. Um, and these parents we were looking at, they had the genes available that I could be a redheaded person and I was concerned about being violent. I think I had hurt people in a past life, and so for this life, I was very concerned. I didn't want to hurt anybody, and I felt like being a girl, I'd be less likely to hurt anybody. So I wanted to be a girl, and I wanted to be redheaded because I really liked the red hair. I like the idea of having a rare hair color. It really appealed to me. But we started looking in the details of what that would mean, and the genes, like they just weren't quite right with my personality. If I had chosen to be a redheaded girl, I would have been kind of like socially awkward. I never would have gotten married. It just wasn't the right fit. So we started looking at, okay, well, what about, a redheaded boy? And the genetics just, there weren't enough options available. I couldn't get the kind of body I wanted. And so we started looking at, okay, well, what about a brown haired boy? And they had lots and lots of genes for that. That was like the dominant gene for these parents. And so it soon became clear that that was a better fit for me, to be a brown haired boy. And I know that like hair color it seems so trivial, but that was important to me as a soul somehow. I don't know that's what stands out from my memory. Anyway, we started looking at the details of this body, and I wanted to be very good looking, like the best looking guy on the planet, and that was available to these parents. But my God showed me. They basically said, "Okay, look at your level of spiritual development. If you're the best looking guy on the planet, if you're really, really good looking, women are going to treat you a different way. You're going to have certain opportunities and you're not going to be able to resist those temptations." Essentially, I would have been very promiscuous if I'd been like that good looking. And it was obvious that there were spiritual downsides of being extremely promiscuous. And that was a deal breaker for me. So I backed the level of attractiveness down to more closer to average, still attractive, but not very attractive. And I know at 50, you're probably looking at me and thinking, well, this guy's not attractive at all. But as a younger guy, I was okay looking. I was a little bit attractive. Anyway, um, and then we started looking at intelligence. And again, I wanted to be like the smartest guy on the planet, just through the roof IQ. And my guide said, okay, well, those genes are available to these parents, but a downside for you, you're going to be arrogant. You're going to look down on other people. You would be an atheist. You would have a lot of trouble working with other people, and it's not a good fit for you. And so I realized that they were absolutely right. This was a spiritual downside for me if I had decided to be an extremely intelligent person. So again, we backed the intelligence down to an intelligent person, but nothing, nothing groundbreaking, no Einstein or anything like that. And then I was able to pick everything about this body, the height, the down to the most intimate detail. I knew what this body was going to be, and basically anything was open to me as long as it was a gene from these parents. I had to pick from them, or we could have looked at different parents if I had really wanted to. I didn't have to be born to these parents, but I found a body that seemed reasonable to me. I thought, okay, this would work. And then my guide said, okay, well, there's some things we have planned for your life. And they basically showed me some things I had done in previous lives, some mistakes I had made. And it was kind of like mistakes I had made in past lives. They still like weighed me down spiritually. They were holding me back from higher levels of spiritual happiness. And in order to get rid of that, to move on from it, it's kind of like I needed to experience what I had previously given out. And they showed me a couple examples. Some of them are a little too personal to share, but one example really stands out. It's just very straightforward. They showed me a scene from a previous life where I had beat someone up pretty badly. I had been kind of like a big guy, and I beat up this guy, and and they showed me that I had felt proud about it when I had lived that life. But they showed me that spiritually, this was the wrong thing to do. I'd like mistreated this guy. I could have easily avoided this fight. I caused him to have shame and to be physically hurt, and they showed me all of this. And now, essentially, in this upcoming life, I was going to be on the receiving end of something similar, and it was going to like it was like an education. This wasn't a punishment. It was kind of like I was just receiving what I had done at what I had given out in the past, and this was going to, free me from the spiritual. There was like a weight to it that held me down, prevented me from moving to higher levels of happiness. Anyway, so I agreed to that, and they showed me some other stuff I had done where I had hurt other people, and they planned for me in this life. I'm going to dislocate the shoulder, and that would be an unpleasant experience for me. And they showed me further I was gonna, uh, hurt this shoulder, which a bunch with a more serious injury. And we took a close look at that, and it was obvious that the level of human medicine was high enough that they would be able to fix this shoulder. And I agreed to this, but these two injuries were directly related to what I had done in a previous life where I'd hurt somebody else. Anyway, there was other stuff they showed me that I had done in a previous life, and how that was going to directly play into my upcoming life. And I needed to agree to it. Like they couldn't just force this on me. Like I needed to agree, otherwise it wouldn't happen. They needed my consent, but I consented with most of what they wanted me to go through. And when we got through all that, they had a bunch of other plans that they had that they wanted me to work with. They had other souls where I was going to play some part in this other soul life, and another soul might play a part in my life. There's a lot of little things that were planned out, and they would significantly either help that other soul with their development, or it would help me with my development, or make my path a little bit easier. Like there was a lot of reasons why there was some of this stuff planned out. And anyway, my guides and the guides for these other people, they were like working behind the scenes, and they were planning out all kinds of stuff. But they needed my agreement for some of these details. Like if I was going to go through some kind of certain hardship, I needed to agree to it. Otherwise it wasn't going to happen. Anyway, and I witnessed other people agreeing to, or other souls agreeing to some of the stuff they were going to go through in life. I remember one person or one soul was agreeing to something, and this was like a multi-life agreement. Like they were going to get something out of this life, but in order to make that happen, like they needed to agree to other stuff and even a future life to make it all work. Anyway, there was all kinds of agreements. When my guides and I had all this stuff set, but my guide wanted me to, okay, we'll step back, and now that all this stuff is set, do you agree to this and the whole package now? And I took a look at the entire life, what it would look like, what kind of choices I would have in life and how it could go different ways. And basically I agreed. I said, okay, yes, I'm willing to go through this life. And I was able to witness the conception of this body. And I don't mean that from like the physical aspect. We all know how babies are conceived, but from the spiritual side of things, I was able to witness the conception of this body. And from the spiritual side of things, it was like a very beautiful thing. There was a spiritual significance to it, like it was important. And I remember that I didn't join this. I didn't fully join with this body until right before birth. It kind of like I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what I was doing, but I wasn't like fully immersed with this body until right before birth. Anyway, my my question was answered, and so it's like I was back to being floating around in my neighbor's backyard. I was back to uh, person, but in the neighbor's backyard, just floating around. Anyway, and I had more questions. I wanted to know, okay, well, that answered these questions, but what happened to me between different lives? Like what happens to souls when they're between lives? And I was shown things that I had been through between lives. I saw that I had been, a number of different, I guess, spiritual realms is what I would call them. I'd been in a number of different spiritual realms between lives. I had been in some horrible realms and some just a little bit bad realms and happy realms. The worst was I had been at one point this, I guess I had been a terrible person or a violent person. And, when I died, it's like I got the full spiritual weight of what I had done in life. Anyway, I had been this, it was like a hellish environment, and I had been I looked like a terrible monster. And like me and all these other spiritual beings were just fighting with each other. We just fought with each other constantly. And there was no uh, remembrance of the past or hope for a better future. We didn't know anything except trying to fight each other, trying to kill each other. And that's just how we existed. But after, I don't know how long, it's like time is kind of like meaningless, but eventually I stopped fighting with the others. I stopped trying to kill the others, and I actually tried to help someone else there. And when I tried to help someone else in this hellish environment, an angel or a being of light swooped down from above and pulled me out of this horrible fight. And I asked, why did you pull me out of that? And they told me when I stopped fighting, when I wanted to stop fighting with others, I no longer belonged there. And they had, they had a way for me to transition and, continue my improvement. I saw some other unpleasant realms I had been in that weren't nearly that bad, but were still a little bit unpleasant. And then I saw some happy realms I had been in. I had been in some sort of happy realm between lives that it looked a lot like a medieval city. There was buildings and roads, and there was souls there who had lived a life, and now they existed in this realm, and they continued to have jobs, and they did things just like they had done on Earth. Like that's how they were living in the afterlife. But I quickly left that realm because I it's like I recognized it as a midway realm, and I wanted to continue to move to higher levels, happier realms. Um, and then one realm I saw that I had been in between lives was like a city of light. It was very bright. The buildings were made of It's like the buildings were made of light, but they were translucent, so you could see through them, and you could see the beings there were kind of like translucent beings of light. You could kind of like see through them. Anyway, when that ended, I was still just floating there in my neighbor's backyard, and I had the realization that, oh wow, after this life, I can go back to one of these really happy realms, and I was very excited about that. I really wanted to go back to one of these happy realms, and I remember that I had friends there that I was very, very close to, and it's kind of like as soon as I had that realization, this being of light came to me very quickly and said, uh, "You are not to leave your body." It's like it's kind of like I was being rebuked. It's like it felt like I had bent the rules by leaving my body, like I had done something maybe I wasn't supposed to. I'm not exactly sure, but bam! Immediately I was like back in my body. I stood up, went home. Um, I tried to explain it to my mom what had happened, but there was no way I could explain all this at that age. Um, you know, I just couldn't explain it. And so I would think about this experience daily for like months. And after maybe 6 months or so, um, I was contacted by my guides. It was like a telepathic communication. I knew exactly who it was. It was the same guides who would help me plan this life. And they essentially said, uh, that they wanted to hide this memory from me. They wanted to hide it because it was interfering with my ability to live life as intended. I couldn't ever develop faith because I had seen it for myself that God is real and we're spiritual beings. Like I'd seen that for myself. I couldn't. You can't have faith if you have that kind of certain knowledge. And anyway, they explained that that was going to interfere with my life, and they wanted to hide my faith. I'm sorry, they wanted to hide my experience so that I would be able to develop faith. And also, they told me that I would get those memories back, but in order to get them back and be basically to be ready to handle some of the stuff I had seen, they needed to change my life plan, and needed to add some difficulties to my life to prepare me so that I could handle some of the stuff I saw. And I agreed to it. And, after that, I didn't think about that experience at all. I went through life. I had I had my nose broken in middle school, and I had no memory that that is something I had agreed to, prior to life. I had my shoulder broken and dislocated, and I had no memory that that was something I had agreed to prior to life. I went through all kinds of stuff. And then at 36, I was reading a newspaper article by Alexander, a Newsweek magazine article written about Eben Alexander. Anyway, he was a near-death experiencer, and somehow when reading about his experience, I really accepted that. Wow, there's really something to this stuff about God. It kind of like it. I believed what he said. I had faith that I think maybe was higher than what I'd been through before, or what I'd had before, and somehow that triggered a recall of all these memories. It's like all these memories of what had happened to me as a child came back to me. And I was like, oh, wow, this is amazing. I can't believe I forgot this stuff. But anyway, so that was about, I guess, 11 or 12 years ago, something like that. And so I'm just trying to, share my experience now and explain what I experienced as a child when I came.
Wow, that was a wealth of information you came back with. And one of the things I'm highly surprised about is the fact that you have this recall, this memory. A lot of near death experiencers, when they have their experience and they receive this in depth information from
Right.
this higher power or higher source, typically they can't come back with it. This veil of forgetfulness follows
Yeah.
them and they can only remember bits and pieces. But it sounds like you came back with an in-depth recall of the experience itself.
Yeah. And I think there is parts of it that I don't recall. Like, I think there's more happened that I don't, I either don't remember or I can't, I didn't bring it back for me.
Wow, there was more to remember. That's
I
even
think
more
so.
fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's go back. I have a few
Okay.
follow-up questions for you. So this all started off, as I stated at the top of the show, with with breathing issues. You collapsed. You then had what can be described as an out-of-body experience. You're
Right.
floating over your body. You're looking down at your physical body, and then you go into this life review where you can see your parents.
Yeah.
You could see what they were thinking. You could see some of their hardships. You can see how they loved you, etc. You then say you look over to the side and there's this light entity or some sort of star
Yeah.
um, coming about. And it's here where you have these questions. And you use the word telepathic all throughout your experience. I'm assuming when you had these questions and they were being answered, this was the same, right? Was it telepathic as well?
Yeah, it wasn't verbal or anything, nothing like that.
And
Like
then you
mind to mind communication.
correct, yes, and many near-death experiencers also, come back
Yeah.
with the same type of experience. You then talk about, being shifted into these pre-birth memories. You talk about being a part of this collective consciousness, if you would, before you even became, incarnated into a human being. You said you were part of all these entities, and, these entities had some sort of reward from time to time where you kind of
Mm.
passed yours up and you were selected because you passed yours up because you were, I guess, empathetic and you were in face to face with this higher power that you call God, who provided information to you about God's plan, so to speak, right?
Right.
That well, here's the question there. Did you believe that when you were in this collective consciousness, coming into this earthly realm, did you have a choice for it, or was this solely a plan of God to have you go through this materialistic realm, or was it
Right.
something you all wanted to do?
Yeah. So yes, I agreed to God's plan. It was God's plan, but I agreed to it. And the reason I agreed to it, like, God laid it out for me very clearly. This is going to be very brief, but it's necessary for you to really enjoy your future existence. And what God laid out the facts, it was kind of a no brainer. Yes, of course I'm going to agree to this. But I could have rejected that what God provided the option He gave me. But I agreed to it.
Yes, because many near-death experiencers refer to themselves very often as co-creators with this higher power or
Right.
co-creators with God. So I guess you agreeing to the plan makes you a co-creator, so to speak, because you are
Right.
because without you agreeing to it, this plan can't come to fruition. You're then asked, would you like to see the face of God? And when you saw the face of God, you saw once again this collective conscious, these billions and billions of souls, and they were diverse. You made it clear
Right.
that they weren't all the same. They were like a fingerprint on someone's finger. They were all different,
Right.
right? Very diverse, had their own free will, autonomy, etc. You then say that you were shown lives on other planets, which I guess from that we can assume that out in our vast universe, there are lives going
Right.
on other planets in addition to the ones happening here on planet Earth.
Right.
Um, you came back down to your physical body, it sounds like. You were hovering over it. And then before you entered it, there was some sort of recall of your past lives.
Right.
So we get into the concept of reincarnation, and you had the ability to choose to come back. Many people, you might hear them say, "Oh, I'm done with this life. I'm not coming back. If I ever go back up there, I'm not choosing this life to come back ever again."
Right.
Which you certainly had the choice, but they're very persuasive. They
Yes.
showed you how you could aid someone if you came back, and that was persuasive enough for you to come back. But it's here where you also choose your life type. And it's very interesting and fascinating to hear how you could choose your hair color, your eye color, you could choose your parents, but if you chose your parents, you'd have to
Right.
choose something that's within their genetic range.
Yes.
So, well, for example, you coming as a female, having to live the type of life you were living probably wouldn't have matched with the genes of the parents that you are trying to select because it probably wouldn't get you to your goal. It sounds very complex, but it all had a bigger meaning and a bigger purpose to
Right.
it.
And it wasn't complicated or convoluted when you're making those choices. It's very straightforward and obvious.
Just to this linear brain of ours, to
Yeah.
the human mind, it just sounds like something we talk about life and death as, you're born to parents. You didn't choose your parents, kind of like life chose you, but in the reality, it's the other way around. You had
Right.
full
Yes.
autonomy, you had
Yes.
full choice, and you could make these decisions um, based on what was presented to you at the moment.
Right.
You then go into how you wanted to know about your in between lives, and you could see the different realms you went into after you died.
Right.
Some of them were peaceful, some of them were hellish or dark, rather.
Right.
But even there seems to be autonomy. You said you were in a dark realm where you were constantly fighting with these entities, but once you chose to aid or help someone,
Right.
this is when the angelic beings brought you out of it. So even in these dark, hellish realms, we have the concept in religion that you're there forever, you're going to burn in fire forever for eternity. But even there, you had the choice, the free will choice.
Yeah. It was very clear to me that the wherever we are after we die, we're not stuck like that forever.
And you wanted to elevate to a higher place.
Right.
And so this is why reincarnation was very important for you to come back and, I guess, correct wrongs. They call it karmic debts sometimes,
Yeah.
things that are attached to us. And we have the free will choice here on earth, just as we had the free will choice in the spiritual realm to come here to change our lives, to make it, you know, more meaningful so that we can ascend to those higher elevated realms.
Right.
So you go back down into to where your body is again, you're floating over it, and here you hear a voice kind of demanding you not to leave it. Get back in. You've seen too much, right? And you've
Yes.
seen enough. Get back into that physical body. And you do so. And obviously, when you wake up from this, was there any medical help that you received after collapsing like that? Did anyone wonder what was wrong with you? Did you tell your mother you collapsed?
So when I got up, my brother had come to check on me. I guess it had been about 30 seconds and I had no breathing problem at all. I could breathe just fine at that point.
So this was very brief. That's very interesting. So
Yes.
you talked about the time being different when you had your out of body
Right.
experience. So this was about 30 seconds, but it sounded like it was a lifetime.
Yeah, 30 seconds here and doesn't equal 30 seconds in the spiritual realms. It's like it's just not the same.
And obviously at age 6, you couldn't tell your mother what you just experienced. I mean,
Right.
how could you even wrap your little 6-year-old developing brain around what you just witnessed? But you stated that at some point, these entities telepathically came back to you. And I guess this could be described as an after effect of your near death experience,
Right.
to which they said to you, you wouldn't be able to remember certain things and they had to adjust your life because you came back with so much information, but you wouldn't be able to remember the adjustments. But these things happened to you that were kind of like hardships, but it was just a part of the plan, part of the new plan
Yes,
for
yes.
you to proceed with your life. Now, many near death experiencers also describe having higher empathy levels when they come back from something like this. They describe precognition levels being higher, premonitions, lack of fear of death, etc. Did you come back with any of those as well?
Well, I certainly have. I don't fear death at this point, like not at all. Um, I don't really think I have any other spiritual gifts the way other people describe, except perhaps I feel like sometimes where I might have multiple decisions in life, I feel like maybe my God, you're kind of trying to push me one direction or over another. But I don't feel like I have any, some of the gifts that other experiencers have. I don't feel like I have those.
Now, we started the conversation off with a potential religious question, but of course, you were too young and really didn't have the full concept of God and an afterlife. Now that you've come back from this near death experience, has religion been a part of your repertoire or not?
Uh, so I guess I view religion as the nice starting point. But I think as people progress with their spiritual growth, it becomes kind of a box that holds them in and holds them back from further spiritual progression. And so I don't really like organized religions, except that it gives someone a starting point. So I would not describe myself as religious at all, but I definitely acknowledge that God is real and that we're all spiritual beings, going on a spiritual on a spiritual journey.
So, if anything, it sounds like you could probably just describe yourself simply as being spiritual.
Yeah, that might be cliche, but I think that fits way better for me than saying I'm religious.
And it's a constant terminology that near death experiencers use, even if they were religious in the past
Right.
prior to having their near death experience. So, with that said, again, this is a very complex, multi-layered experience you had here. You came back with a lot of information. Have you tried to talk about this with other people in your circle, and how have you been
Right.
received?
Yeah, so I got these memories back at 36, and I started trying to explain this to people, and there was a lot of like people looking at me like I'm crazy, or they just didn't understand what I'm saying. This is so outside of the normal conversation for so many people that it's really difficult to bring it up. Now, there were people that received it very well, and the people that didn't receive it well at all, and kind of everything in between. So it's definitely difficult to share and become comfortable sharing. Like it wasn't easy at all when I first tried. But I feel like I have some very like I saw some important pieces of this puzzle, and I'm just trying to share them with other people because I think if you put the little pieces that I bring back with all the other pieces that other people bring back, you can really piece together a pretty clear picture of how this earthly uh, adventure that we're all on, how it all works, and that if you can understand how it all works, you can live a better life, and therefore everybody can make better choices and set themselves up for greater happiness in the spiritual realm.
Now, God said to you at some point during your near death experience that this event or these events that these souls would go through in this material earthly realm would last, for a short time, but it would serve a greater good for some sort of everlasting joy. What exactly is that everlasting joy? Did you get any indication?
Uh, so I think so a couple things about that. God was like extremely confident that this was a good plan. Like the level of confidence, I can't really describe it. Just absolutely confident this is a good plan. What was developed, and that it was very very short from a spiritual perspective. But the only thing I can say is it seemed to be like we're all going to end up like these souls that I'd seen with God at the beginning of my spiritual journey, and they were just ridiculously happy. They existed with each other and with God, and they really enjoyed their existence and each other and being with God. And I couldn't get in. I couldn't begin to describe how happy they were. It's just totally off the charts. And so I think that's what's in store for all of us when we get to the when we do what God wanted us to do, basically, which was to freely choose kindness, compassion, honesty, integrity, all these traits that are good. Well, you go ahead and pick them for yourself. That's kind of how it works. And when we do that, then we'll you know be closer to able to move up to these higher realms where extreme happiness awaits us.
So it sounds like an ultimate merging with the with the source
Yeah.
is what's going to bring us the joy and what lies in store for us if we can keep those particular virtues that you mentioned on earth.
Right.
Very fascinating indeed. Well, Aaron, I want to thank you for coming on the Real Spiritual Talk podcast and sharing with us that absolutely fascinating account.
Well, thank you, Lamont. I appreciate the opportunity to share my experience.
No problem at all. Ladies and gentlemen, Aaron Thomas Green.
Thank you.